I was staring through my frosted windshield at a bright yellow Hummer blocking my driveway when the first real bands of the blizzard started slamming into Custer County, South Dakota. The Weather Service had been screaming about this storm for 3 days, warning it would be the worst winter event to hit the Black Hills region in a decade. And here I was, Connor Zimmerman, owner and sole operator of Zimmerman Snow Removal, the only commercial plowing operation within 100 miles, trapped behind some idiot's luxury SUV. I'd been up since 4 in the morning prepping my equipment. My F550 with the 8-foot Boss V plow was gassed up, salted, and ready to go. The county had me on contract, plus I had another 47 private clients scattered across the rural landscape between Custer and Hermosa. People depended on me. The hospital needed clear access roads. The volunteer fire department needed their lot cleared. Mrs. Henderson, an 83-year-old widow living alone on County Road 17, needed her half-mile driveway plowed so the home health nurse could reach her. But none of that was happening while this banana-colored monstrosity sat diagonally across my driveway exit. I grabbed my phone and checked the HOA group chat. Our subdivision, Pine Ridge Estates, was relatively new, carved out of former ranch land about 6 years ago. 23 homes on half-acre lots, all required to follow the covenants and restrictions enforced by our homeowners association. The HOA board consisted of 3 people: President Brenda Hargrove, Treasurer Mike Sullivan, and Secretary Patricia Morrison. Brenda was the problem. She'd been president for 4 years running, mostly because nobody else wanted the job. But somewhere along the line, the tiny amount of power had transformed her from a moderately pleasant neighbor into a tyrant with a laminated copy of the CC and Articus and a measuring tape. Last month, she'd fined the Kowalskis $300 because their mailbox was painted forest green instead of the approved hunter green. The month before, she'd threatened liens against 2 families for having basketball hoops visible from the street. I scrolled through the messages. Nothing about the Hummer. I threw my truck into park and climbed out into the building wind. Snow was already accumulating on the pavement, big wet flakes that would turn into cement when the temperature dropped another 5 degrees. I had maybe a 2-hour window before the roads became completely impassable. Walking up to the Hummer, I noticed a pink leopard print steering wheel cover through the driver's window. Brenda's car. Of course it was. I pulled out my phone and called her number. It rang 6 times before going to voicemail. Brenda, this is Connor Zimmerman at 447 Ponderosa Drive. Your Hummer is blocking my driveway. I need to get my plow truck out immediately. Please move it as soon as you get this. I tried the front door of my house, thinking maybe she'd knocked and I'd missed it somehow, but there was no sign of anyone. Walking around the Hummer, I noticed she'd parked it at a perfect angle to block both my driveway and the driveway of my next-door neighbor, Tom Richards. Tom was a long-haul trucker, currently somewhere in Texas according to his wife, so his driveway being blocked didn't matter much. Mine did. I called Brenda again. Voicemail again. The wind was picking up, and I could barely see the Hendersons' place across the street anymore. The blizzard was intensifying faster than predicted. My phone buzzed. County Sheriff's Dispatch. Connor, this is Beth at Dispatch. Sheriff wants to know your ETA on getting the main roads cleared. We've already got 3 vehicles in ditches on Highway 16. Beth, I've got a situation. Someone parked a vehicle blocking my driveway. I'm trying to get it resolved now. How long? I don't know. Working on it. Connor, we need you out there. Highway 79 is becoming a parking lot. I know. I'm doing everything I can. I hung up and tried Brenda's number again. This time she picked up. What? Her voice was sharp, annoyed. "Brenda, your Hummer is blocking my driveway. I need to get my plow out." "I know exactly where my vehicle is parked, Connor." That caught me off guard. "You know, then why is it there?" "Because you're in violation of HOA Covenant Section 12, Subsection 4. Your commercial vehicle has been parked in your driveway for 17 consecutive days. The covenant clearly states that commercial vehicles may not be stored in driveways for more than 72 hours within any 7-day period." I felt my jaw clench. "Brenda, we're in the middle of a blizzard emergency. I need to clear roads. People's lives are at stake. And I need residents to follow the rules. Your truck should have been parked at a commercial facility. I've been documenting this violation for weeks. This morning, I decided to take action by preventing your continued illegal use of HOA property." "My driveway isn't HOA property. It's my property. The covenant grants the HOA authority over all visible aspects of properties, including driveways. I'm exercising that authority. If you want me to move my vehicle, pay the accumulated fines totaling $8,200. $8,000. I couldn't even process that number." "How did you get to $8,000? 17 days at $500 per day, plus administrative fees." "Brenda, the county needs the roads cleared right now. People are stranded. Emergency vehicles can't get through." "Then you should have followed the rules." "I'll move my vehicle once you pay the fine. You can Venmo me." "I don't have $8,000 sitting in my Venmo account." "That sounds like a personal problem, Connor. Maybe you should have thought about that before violating the covenants." She hung up. I stood there in the howling wind, snow already piling up against the Hummer's tires, trying to figure out if I just hallucinated that conversation. Brenda Hargrove, a 46-year-old woman whose primary occupation seemed to be making life miserable for her neighbors, was holding my plow truck hostage during a blizzard emergency because of HOA rules. I called Mike Sullivan, the HOA treasurer. Mike was a reasonable guy, an accountant who worked from home and mostly stayed out of Brenda's crusades. "Connor, hey, you getting ready to plow?" "Mike, Brenda parked her Hummer blocking my driveway. She's demanding $8,000 in fines before she'll move it. She says my truck violates the commercial vehicle restrictions." Silence on the other end. Then, "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. I've got the county dispatcher blowing up my phone. Highway 79 is shutting down and I'm trapped behind Brenda's Hummer." "That's insane. Let me call her." "Thanks, Mike." I jogged back to my garage where I kept my equipment. Maybe I could hook up my ATV plow and at least clear a few driveways in the neighborhood. But even as I thought it, I knew that was impossible. The ATV could handle residential driveways in light snow, but it was useless for county roads and completely inadequate for this kind of heavy, wet snowfall. The county needed my F550 with its 8-foot blade and 2-ton weight. My phone rang. "Mike." She's not answering for me either. "Connor, I'm looking at the covenants right now. There is a commercial vehicle restriction, but it has an exception for vehicles necessary for a homeowner's livelihood, and there's supposed to be a warning and appeal process before any fines. She can't just invent an $8,000 fine and block your driveway. Can you do anything? I can call an emergency HOA meeting, but that requires 48 hours notice to all board members and residents. In the meantime, legally, I don't have authority to override her as president." "Mike, we don't have 48 hours. We might not have 48 minutes." "I know. Have you thought about calling the police?" "For what? Trespassing? Maybe, or obstruction. I don't know, Connor. This is beyond anything I've dealt with. Brenda's been getting worse, but this is a whole new level." I thanked Mike and hung up. Then I called the non-emergency line for the Custer County Sheriff's Office. The dispatcher connected me to Deputy Frank Martinez, who I knew from plowing the sheriff's office parking lot. "Frank, this is Connor Zimmerman. I've got a weird situation." I explained the whole thing. Frank listened without interrupting. "So let me get this straight. Your HOA president is blocking your driveway with her personal vehicle, refusing to move it unless you pay her $8,000 during a declared weather emergency. That's exactly what's happening. And you're the only plow operator in the county." "Yes. Hold on." I heard muffled conversation in the background. A minute later, Frank came back. "Connor, Sheriff Davis says he's sending me and Deputy Chen to your location. We'll get this sorted out. What's your address?" 447 Ponderosa Drive, Pine Ridge Estates. "We'll be there in 15 minutes. Might be longer depending on road conditions." "Thanks, Frank." I went back inside my house and made coffee, watching through the kitchen window as the snow piled higher. My truck sat in the garage, ready to go, useless. I thought about just ramming the Hummer out of the way with my plow, but damaging someone's vehicle, even in these circumstances, would definitely land me in legal trouble. The coffee was still brewing when I saw headlights through the white-out conditions. A sheriff's SUV, chains on all 4 tires, pulled up in front of my house. Frank and Deputy Chen climbed out, heads bent against the wind. I met them at the door. "Show us the situation," Frank said. We walked around to the driveway. The Hummer was now almost completely covered in snow, a yellow lump with vague car-shaped features. "She parked it there deliberately?" Deputy Chen asked. She was younger, maybe 30, with sharp eyes that took in every detail. "According to her, yes. She says I'm violating HOA rules by keeping my commercial truck in my driveway." "During a blizzard," Frank said flatly. "During a blizzard." Frank pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7. Can you get me a phone number for Brenda Hargrove, resident of Pine Ridge Estates?" A minute later, he was dialing his phone. I could hear it ringing on speaker. "Hello," Brenda's voice. "Mrs. Hargrove, this is Deputy Frank Martinez with the Custer County Sheriff's Office. I'm at 447 Ponderosa Drive. Is the yellow Hummer blocking this driveway your vehicle?" "Yes, it is. And I have every right to park it there. The homeowner is in violation of, Madam, I need you to come move your vehicle immediately." "I will not. Not until Mr. Zimmerman pays his outstanding HOA fines." "Madam, we're in a declared weather emergency. Mr. Zimmerman operates the county's only snow removal service. You're preventing him from performing essential services." "That's not my problem. He should have followed the rules." Deputy Chen leaned closer to Frank's phone. "Madam, this is Deputy Chen. Are you aware that obstruction of emergency services is a misdemeanor in South Dakota, punishable by up to 1 year in jail and a $5,000 fine?" Silence. Then, "I'm not obstructing emergency services. I'm enforcing HOA covenants. You're preventing a contracted emergency service provider from accessing his equipment during a declared weather emergency. That's textbook obstruction. You have 10 minutes to move your vehicle, or we'll have it towed at your expense and you'll be cited. You can't do that. I know my rights. I'm the HOA president, madam. 9.5 minutes. Brenda hung up. Frank looked at me. "Get your truck ready to roll. If she's not here in 10 minutes, we're having it towed." I ran to the garage and fired up the F550. The diesel engine roared to life, warming up while I did a final check of the plow controls. Everything was perfect. I'd maintained this truck like my life depended on it, because in rural South Dakota, sometimes it did. Through the garage opening, I could see Frank and Deputy Chen standing guard over the Hummer. Snow was falling so hard now that I could barely make out their shapes. The radio in my truck crackled with desperate calls from dispatch. More vehicles in ditches. A semi-truck jackknifed on Highway 16. An ambulance stuck trying to reach a cardiac emergency outside Hermosa. 7 minutes passed. 8. 9. At the 10-minute mark, Frank got on his radio. Dispatch, need a tow truck to 447 Ponderosa Drive, Pine Ridge Estates. We're impounding a vehicle for obstruction of emergency services. The dispatcher's response was garbled, but I caught the gist. Every tow truck in the county was already busy pulling vehicles out of ditches. Frank swore under his breath. Deputy Chen walked over to my garage. "Mr. Zimmerman, is there any way you can get your truck around that Hummer?" I looked at the geometry. My driveway was 12 feet wide. The Hummer was about 6.5 feet wide, parked diagonally. My truck with the plow was nearly 9 feet wide. Not without hitting it or driving through the Hendersons' yard. Their yard has a septic system with the drain field right there. If I drive across it with a truck this heavy, I'll crush the pipes. Frank made a decision. "We're moving it ourselves. Chen, get the Slim Jim from the vehicle." "Frank, that's breaking into," I started. "It's an emergency situation." "We have the authority. We'll document everything." Deputy Chen returned with a Slim Jim and worked it into the door frame. 45 seconds later, the Hummer's door clicked open. Frank climbed into the driver's seat. "Keys aren't here. She took them with her." "Can you hot wire it?" Deputy Chen asked. "Not these new electronic systems. We'd need to." His radio exploded with static and urgent voices. A school bus, returning from an away game in Rapid City, had slid off Highway 79. 23 high school students trapped in a bus that was teetering on the edge of a steep embankment. Frank jumped out of the Hummer. "Connor, we've got to go. That bus situation is critical." "What about the Hummer? Push it out of the way with your plow." "I'm authorizing it as an emergency measure. We'll deal with any fallout later." "Frank, that's thousands of dollars in damage. And those are 23 kids whose bus might roll down a hill. Make the call, Connor. I'll back you up with the sheriff." They ran to their SUV and roared off into the whiteout, lights flashing. I sat in my truck, hands on the wheel, looking at the Hummer. Frank was right. This was an emergency. But the moment I pushed that vehicle with my plow, Brenda would sue me for everything I owned. She'd probably file criminal charges too. My phone rang. Dispatch again. "Connor, please tell me you're rolling." "Beth, I've got a situation. The sheriff's deputies were just here, but they got called away to that bus incident." "Connor, I've got a list of emergencies as long as my arm." "We need you out here now. The state patrol is trying to close Highway 79, but they can't even reach the closure points because the roads are impassable. You're our only option." I thought about Mrs. Henderson, about the cardiac patient the ambulance couldn't reach, about 23 kids in a bus that might slide down a hill. "I'm rolling. Give me 2 minutes." I hung up, put the truck in gear, and angled the plow down. The blade scraped against my concrete driveway as I lined up with the Hummer's rear quarter panel. I took a breath and pressed the accelerator. The plow blade hit the Hummer with a crunch of fiberglass and metal. The vehicle's rear end swung around, tires sliding on the snow-covered pavement. I kept pushing, slowly, steadily, until the Hummer was fully in Tom Richards' driveway, leaving my exit clear. The Hummer's rear bumper was caved in, the taillight assembly shattered, and there was a long scrape along the entire passenger side. Easily $4,000 or $5,000 in damage. I didn't have time to think about it. I raised the plow blade and roared out of Pine Ridge Estates, hitting the main road at 40 miles per hour. The next 6 hours were a blur of white. I started with the main arteries, clearing Highway 79 from Custer north toward Rapid City. The snow was falling at 2 inches per hour, heavy and wet, the kind that packs down into concrete if you don't stay ahead of it. My truck pushed through drifts 3 feet high, the plow blade throwing snow in huge arcs to the side. I reached the school bus around 11 in the morning. The state patrol and fire department were already there, but they'd been stuck themselves, unable to get equipment close enough to stabilize the bus. With the road cleared, they brought in 2 heavy wreckers and pulled the bus back onto solid ground. All 23 kids were cold and scared but unharmed. From there, I worked my way through my priority list. County Road 17 to Mrs. Henderson's place. The hospital access roads, fire department. Then the secondary routes, the farm roads where ranchers needed to reach livestock. I plowed for 6 straight hours before the snow finally started to ease off. By 3 in the afternoon, the blizzard was winding down. I'd cleared maybe 60% of my contracted routes, but the critical ones were done. Emergency services could move. The hospital was accessible. People could get home. I was heading back toward Pine Ridge Estates when my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Mr. Zimmerman, this is attorney Patricia Wilcox. I represent Brenda Hargrove. I'm calling to inform you that Mrs. Hargrove is filing a civil suit against you for destruction of property. You willfully and maliciously damaged her vehicle to the tune of approximately $6,000. We'll be seeking damages plus punitive awards. You can expect to be served with papers within 5 business days. Your client blocked my driveway during a weather emergency and refused to move her vehicle. Mrs. Hargrove was exercising her legal authority as HOA president to enforce neighborhood covenants. Your response was to commit vandalism. We have photographs of the damage. We'll be seeking full restitution. Tell Mrs. Hargrove she can explain her actions to the sheriff. Deputy Martinez witnessed the entire situation. Deputy Martinez illegally entered Mrs. Hargrove's vehicle without a warrant. Any testimony from him will be tainted by his own criminal actions. Good day, Mr. Zimmerman." She hung up. I drove home through streets I'd just cleared, my body aching from 6 hours of intense concentration and the constant jarring of the truck over rough roads. My driveway was clear, but the Hummer still sat in Tom Richards' driveway, now buried under 8 inches of fresh snow, a monument to Brenda's insanity. Inside my house, I stripped off my wet clothes and stood in a hot shower for 20 minutes, trying to process what had happened. I'd been sued before, minor stuff, a property line dispute with a previous neighbor that got resolved in mediation. But this was different. Brenda was coming after me hard, and she had money. Her husband worked for some tech company in Rapid City, pulling down a salary that let them buy a Hummer as a casual second vehicle. My phone buzzed. Mike Sullivan, the HOA treasurer. "Connor, I just heard what happened. Are you okay?" "Physically, yeah. Legally, I'm about to get destroyed. I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting. We can't let Brenda do this. She's the president." "What can you do?" "Patricia and I together have the votes to remove her. We just need to document gross negligence or conduct contrary to the HOA's interests. What she did today qualifies." "Can you come to a meeting tomorrow night? 7 o'clock at my place. I'll be there." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment when my plow blade hit the Hummer, the sickening crunch of expensive metal and plastic. I'd had no choice but try explaining that to a jury. Brenda's lawyer would paint me as a violent lunatic who destroyed property rather than wait for proper channels to resolve a dispute. The next morning, I woke to my phone ringing. Sheriff Davis himself. "Connor, this is Sheriff Davis. I wanted to call personally to thank you for your work yesterday. That bus situation could have been a tragedy. The state patrol coordinator told me you were instrumental in clearing access. Just doing my job, Sheriff. I also heard about the situation with your HOA president. Deputy Martinez filed a complete report. I want you to know that if this goes to court, the sheriff's office will provide testimony supporting your actions. What you did was necessary and appropriate given the emergency circumstances. I appreciate that, Sheriff. Also, we're looking at possible charges against Mrs. Hargrove. Obstruction of emergency services is serious. The county attorney is reviewing the case. After we hung up, I felt slightly better. At least I had the sheriff's department backing me up. But Brenda's civil suit was a separate matter. Even if she faced criminal charges, she could still sue me for damages. I spent the day catching up on the routes I'd missed during the blizzard. The sun came out, bright and blinding on the fresh snow. Temperatures stayed below freezing, which meant the snow wasn't going anywhere. I'd be plowing and replowing for days as wind drifted it back across the roads. At 6:30 that evening, I drove to Mike Sullivan's house, 3 streets over from mine in Pine Ridge Estates. Mike lived in a neat 2-story with blue siding and white trim, exactly within the approved color palette specified in the HOA covenants. Patricia Morrison, the HOA secretary, was already there. Patricia was a retired school teacher, 64 years old, with gray hair and glasses that made her look like everyone's favorite grandmother. She'd been secretary for 3 years and generally tried to moderate Brenda's worst impulses. "Connor, are you all right?" Patricia asked as soon as I walked in. She gave me a quick hug which surprised me. We'd never been particularly close. "I've been better." "What Brenda did was inexcusable," Patricia said. "Mike and I have been discussing this all day. We're removing her as president. Can you do that?" I thought HOA boards were elected. Mike pulled out a binder containing the HOA bylaws. "We can remove a board member for cause with a 2/3 vote of the board. Patricia and I are 2/3. We have cause." Brenda deliberately obstructed emergency services, placed residents at risk, and damaged the reputation of the HOA. She's also planning to sue me for $6,000. Patricia's face went pale. "She's what?" her lawyer called me yesterday. "They're filing a civil suit for property damage." Mike and Patricia exchanged glances. Mike said, "That settles it. We're voting tonight to remove her and install a new president. Patricia, are you willing to serve? If it means stopping Brenda, yes. Then we'll vote right now. This meeting is called to order." I move that we remove Brenda Hargrove as HOA president for gross negligence and conduct contrary to the interests of the association. Specifically, she obstructed emergency services during a declared weather emergency, demanded illegal fines, and initiated a lawsuit against a resident for actions taken in response to her obstruction. "I second the motion," Patricia said. "All in favor?" "Aye," they said together. Motion carries 2-0. Brenda Hargrove is removed as HOA president. I now move that we elect Patricia Morrison as president. "I second," Patricia said. "All in favor?" "Aye." It was done in less than 2 minutes. Brenda had been dethroned. "Now what?" I asked. Mike pulled out another sheet of paper. "Now we send Brenda a letter informing her of the board's action and requiring her to turn over all HOA documents, funds, and property within 7 days. We also issue a formal apology to you on behalf of the HOA and rescind all fines related to your commercial vehicle." "Will that stop her lawsuit?" "No," Mike admitted, "but it removes any claim she might make that she was acting in her official capacity as HOA president. Her lawsuit becomes a personal action, not an HOA matter. That's important for liability purposes." Patricia leaned forward. "Connor, The HOA has general liability insurance. I'm going to contact our insurance company and report this incident. There's a chance they'll provide you with legal defense since Brenda's actions were taken under color of HOA authority, even though we're now repudiating those actions. It wasn't much, but it was something. We spent another hour drafting the letter to Brenda and documenting everything that had happened during the blizzard. Mike had already collected statements from neighbors who'd witnessed the Hummer blocking my driveway. Mrs. Henderson's home health nurse had provided a statement about how the delayed plowing had nearly prevented her from reaching her patient. I left Mike's house feeling slightly more optimistic. At least I wasn't fighting alone. The next morning, I was plowing the parking lot of a medical clinic when my phone rang. Unknown number again. "Hello, Mr. Zimmerman, this is County Attorney Jennifer Walsh. I'm calling about the incident 2 days ago involving Brenda Hargrove. Do you have time to talk?" "Yes, absolutely." I've reviewed Deputy Martinez's report and spoken with Sheriff Davis. I'm prepared to file charges against Mrs. Hargrove for obstruction of emergency services and reckless endangerment. However, I wanted to speak with you first to understand the full scope of the situation. I pulled the truck over and spent 15 minutes walking the county attorney through everything that had happened, from Brenda's phone call demanding $8,000 to my decision to push the Hummer with my plow blade. "And she's now suing you for property damage?" Attorney Walsh asked. "Her lawyer called 2 days ago. I haven't been served yet, but they said papers are coming. That's retaliatory litigation. She obstructs you from performing emergency services. You take necessary action to overcome that obstruction, and she sues you for the consequences of her own illegal conduct. That's not going to play well with any judge. So, what happens now? I'm filing criminal charges today. 2 counts: obstruction of emergency services and reckless endangerment. The reckless endangerment charge stems from her actions potentially preventing emergency responders from reaching people in need. Based on the statements I've received, at least 3 people were directly endangered by the delays she caused. Will this stop her civil lawsuit? No, but it will make it much harder for her to prevail. When the civil case comes before a judge, we'll provide information about the criminal case. Most judges won't look favorably on someone suing for damages when they were engaged in criminal conduct. After we hung up, I felt the first real stirrings of hope. Brenda had overplayed her hand. She'd gone from petty HOA tyrant to actual criminal, and the county was taking it seriously. I finished my plowing routes and headed home around 2 in the afternoon. As I pulled into Pine Ridge Estates, I noticed several cars parked along the street near Brenda's house. One of them was a sheriff's SUV. I parked in my driveway and walked over, keeping a respectful distance. Deputy Chen was standing on Brenda's front porch, talking to someone inside. A moment later, Brenda emerged, her face bright red, wearing a puffy jacket and fuzzy slippers. Deputy Chen handed her some papers. "Mrs. Hargrove, you're being formally charged with obstruction of emergency services and reckless endangerment. These papers explain the charges and your court date. You need to appear before Judge Morrison at the county courthouse on February 14th at 9 a.m. "This is harassment," Brenda shouted. "I was enforcing HOA rules. I have every right to, madam. You can explain your position to the judge. Do you understand the charges and the court date?" "I want to speak to my lawyer." "That's your right. Do you understand the charges and the court date?" "Yes." Brenda snatched the papers from Deputy Chen's hand and stormed back inside, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. Deputy Chen walked back to her SUV, noticed me standing there, and came over. "Mr. Zimmerman, getting your truck out okay now?" "Yeah, thanks." I appreciate what you and Frank did. Just doing our job. For what it's worth, what she did was way over the line. I've never seen anything like it." "How strong is the case against her?" Deputy Chen glanced back at Brenda's house, then lowered her voice. "Between you and me, it's solid. We have documentation, witness statements, recorded phone calls. Unless she pleads out, she's going to trial and she's going to lose." That evening, Mike Sullivan called me. "Did you see the deputies at Brenda's house?" I saw Deputy Chen serving papers. Well, about an hour after that, Brenda showed up at my door demanding to be reinstated as HOA president. I informed her that she'd been removed by a proper board vote and that Patricia is now president. She threatened to sue the HOA. She's suing everyone, apparently. But here's the interesting part. After she left my house, she went to Patricia's house and did the same thing. Patricia told her to leave or she'd call the police. Brenda refused to leave, so Patricia called the sheriff. They sent someone out and told Brenda if she harassed any more board members, she'd be arrested for trespassing. She's losing it. Completely. Patricia and I are considering filing a restraining order if she continues. Over the next week, the situation escalated in ways I never could have imagined. Brenda hired not just one but 2 lawyers, a civil attorney for her property damage lawsuit and a criminal defense attorney for the county's charges. She started a blog called HOA Tyranny in Pine Ridge Estates, where she posted long, rambling screeds about how she was being persecuted for trying to enforce community standards. The blog posts were wild. She claimed I was part of a conspiracy to take over the HOA. She accused Mike and Patricia of embezzling HOA funds, a claim so absurd that Mike immediately consulted his own lawyer about defamation. She posted photos of my Plow truck with angry captions about commercial vehicles destroying neighborhood property values. But the craziest thing happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my garage, performing maintenance on the Plow, when Tom Richards pulled into his driveway next door. Tom had been back from his trucking run for a few days and had already heard about the Hummer incident. "Connor," Tom jogged over. "You need to see this." He held up his phone, showing me a post from the Pine Ridge Estates Facebook group. Brenda had posted a long message announcing that she was organizing a special assessment vote to force me to remove my commercial vehicle from HOA property permanently. She claimed that as a homeowner, she still had the right to call for special votes on covenant enforcement matters. "Can she do that?" Tom asked. "I have no idea." I called Patricia Morrison, who was now officially HOA president. "Patricia, did you see Brenda's Facebook post about a special assessment vote?" I saw it. "She can call for a vote, but it requires 20% of homeowners to petition for it, and then the board has to approve holding the vote. She doesn't have 20% support." "I've been talking to neighbors. Most people think she's lost her mind." "Most people, but not everyone." Patricia hesitated. "There are a few residents who agree with her about commercial vehicles, the Winstons in particular. They've always been sticklers about property values." The Winstons were a retired couple in their 70s who'd moved to Pine Ridge Estates from California. They'd complained about everything from the color of people's front doors to the height of mailbox posts. They'd be natural allies for Brenda. How many people might support her? Maybe 4 or 5 households out of 23, not enough to force a vote, but enough to make noise. That night, I attended the regular monthly HOA meeting, now presided over by Patricia. 18 people showed up, an unusually high turnout. Everyone wanted to talk about Brenda. Patricia gavelled the meeting to order and immediately addressed the elephant in the room. "I know everyone has questions about the recent board changes. Let me be clear. Brenda Hargrove was removed as president for cause, specifically for actions that endangered residents and obstructed emergency services. The board stands by that decision. George Winston raised his hand. I want to hear Brenda's side of the story. This feels like a kangaroo court. Mr. Winston, Brenda was invited to attend this meeting. She declined. She's also facing criminal charges related to her conduct. The board acted appropriately. Criminal charges? Someone in the back asked. Patricia nodded. Brenda is charged with obstruction of emergency services and reckless endangerment. I can't discuss the details of an ongoing criminal case, but the charges stem from her actions during the recent blizzard. The meeting devolved into chaos for a few minutes, everyone talking over each other. Finally, Patricia restored order by banging her gavel repeatedly. One at a time, please. Yes, Sarah Chen, no relation to Deputy Chen, lived 2 doors down from me. I want to thank Connor for clearing our driveway during the blizzard. We needed to get to the hospital because my mother fell. If Connor hadn't cleared the roads, I don't know what we would have done. Several other people chimed in with similar stories. The cardiac patient who'd been unreachable until I cleared County Road 12. The rancher who needed to reach his livestock before they froze. The families who'd been stranded and needed to get home. George Winston tried to interrupt. That doesn't excuse keeping a commercial vehicle in violation of the covenants. Have an exception for vehicles necessary to a homeowner's livelihood, Patricia said firmly. I've reviewed the documents with our attorney. Connor's truck falls under that exception. There is no violation. Then why did Brenda fine him $8,000? Because Brenda exceeded her authority. Those fines are rescinded. The board has issued a formal apology to Connor. The meeting went on for another hour, but the tone had shifted. Most residents supported my actions and were appalled at what Brenda had done. The Winstons and 2 other households remained skeptical, but they were clearly in the minority. As people were leaving, several neighbors came up to shake my hand and thank me personally. It felt good, but I couldn't shake the worry about the pending lawsuit. Brenda's civil case was still moving forward. The papers finally arrived on a Friday. A process server showed up at my door and handed me a thick envelope. I signed for it and opened it immediately. Hargrove v. Zimmerman. Civil case seeking damages for willful destruction of property. The complaint alleged that I had maliciously and without legal justification damaged Brenda's vehicle, causing approximately $6,200 in repairs, plus additional damages for loss of use, emotional distress, and punitive damages. Total amount sought, $45,000. $45,000. I felt sick. I immediately called Patricia Morrison to tell her about the insurance situation we discussed. I already spoke with the insurance company, Patricia said. They're denying coverage. Their position is that your actions weren't taken in your capacity as a homeowner, but as an independent contractor responding to county requests. I'm sorry, Connor. I hung up and sat at my kitchen table, staring at the lawsuit papers. I had maybe $20,000 in savings, built up over years of careful budgeting. A $45,000 judgment would wipe that out and leave me in debt. I'd have to take out loans, maybe lose my house. My phone rang. Sheriff Davis. Connor, I heard you got served with Brenda's lawsuit. News travels fast. It's a small county. Listen, I talked to the county attorney. She's willing to make a statement in your civil case about the necessity of your actions. We're also putting together a full accounting of the emergency response during the blizzard, showing how critical your work was. That should help your defense. Sheriff, I appreciate it, but I don't know if I can afford to fight this. I need to hire a lawyer, and lawyers aren't cheap. Have you contacted your insurance company? I have commercial vehicle insurance and general liability for my business. I called them this morning. They said property damage I cause while plowing is covered, but damage I cause while removing an obstruction from my personal driveway might not be. They're reviewing the policy language. Keep pushing them. Insurance companies always try to deny coverage at first. Make them explain exactly why your policy doesn't cover this situation. I spent the weekend on the phone with my insurance company trying to get a straight answer. The first 3 representatives I spoke with gave me different answers. Finally, I got transferred to a supervisor named Mark, who actually seemed to understand the situation. Mr. Zimmerman, I've reviewed your policy and the incident report. Here's my assessment. Your policy covers property damage that occurs while you're performing snow removal services. The question is whether removing an obstruction from your driveway counts as performing snow removal services. The obstruction was preventing me from accessing my truck to perform snow removal services during a county emergency. I understand that. Let me escalate this to our legal team. I'll have an answer for you by Wednesday. Wednesday came and went with no call. Thursday, I finally got through to Mark again. Mr. Zimmerman, I have good news and complicated news. The good news is we're going to provide coverage. The complicated news is we're only covering up to your policy limit of $25,000, and we're going to vigorously contest the damages. $6,000 for repairs seems high for the damage described. We'll be hiring our own appraiser. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. At least I wouldn't be completely on my own. The insurance company assigned me a lawyer, a sharp woman in her early 40s named Rachel Donovan, who specialized in civil defense cases. We met at her office in Rapid City the following Monday. I've reviewed everything, Rachel said, spreading papers across her conference table. Brenda's lawsuit is weak. She was engaged in criminal conduct. You took the minimum action necessary to overcome her obstruction during an emergency. Any reasonable judge will see that. But we still have to go to trial. Probably not. I'm going to file a motion to dismiss based on the doctrine of necessity. Essentially, the law recognizes that sometimes you have to damage property to prevent greater harm. The classic example is breaking into a burning building to rescue someone. You damaged her car to access your truck and provide emergency services. That's textbook necessity. When does this motion get heard? I'll file it next week. The judge will schedule a hearing probably within 30 days. If the motion is granted, the case gets dismissed and Brenda pays our legal fees. And if it's not granted, then we go to trial. But honestly, Connor, I'd be shocked if this motion fails. The facts are overwhelmingly in your favor. I left Rachel's office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Maybe this nightmare was finally going to end, but Brenda wasn't done. 2 weeks later, on a Wednesday evening, I came home from plowing to find my garage door spray painted with bright red words. Lawsuit coming. I called the sheriff's office immediately. Deputy Martinez came out to take a report. Any cameras? He asked, photographing the damage. No. I've been meaning to install a security system, but I haven't gotten around to it. Neighbors have cameras, we checked. Tom Richards had a Ring doorbell that captured a portion of my driveway. We reviewed the footage together on Tom's phone. At 6:47 p.m., a figure in dark clothes and a ski mask walked up my driveway carrying something. The angle wasn't great, but you could see the person spray painting my garage door, then walking away quickly. The figure appeared to be female based on body shape and size, but there was no way to definitively identify who it was. I'll write this up as vandalism, Deputy Martinez said. Given the ongoing situation with Mrs. Hargrove, we'll definitely be talking to her. The next day, 2 deputies went to Brenda's house to question her. She denied any involvement and refused to say where she'd been the previous evening. They didn't have enough evidence to arrest her, but they made it clear she was a suspect. That evening, Patricia Morrison called an emergency HOA meeting specifically to address the escalating situation. "This has gone too far," Patricia said, standing at the front of Mike Sullivan's living room with 20 homeowners crammed in. "Vandalism against a neighbor is completely unacceptable. If anyone has information about who spray-painted Connor's garage, please come forward," George Winston spoke up. "How do we know it was someone from the neighborhood? Could have been anyone." "The incident occurred at 6:47 p.m., Patricia said. "The person walked up Connor's driveway on foot. That suggests someone local. If anyone saw anything unusual that evening, please tell the sheriff's office." No one volunteered any information. The meeting moved on to other business, but the vandalism hung over everything like a dark cloud. 3 days later, I woke up to find my truck's tires slashed, all 4 of them, cut deep enough that they were completely ruined. Another $1,500 in damages. This time, Tom's Ring camera caught something useful. At 3:22 a.m., a yellow Hummer had driven slowly past my house. The license plate was partially visible. Deputy Martinez ran the plate. It was Brenda's Hummer, the same one I'd pushed with my plow, now repaired. Deputies went to Brenda's house at 7 in the morning. She answered the door in a bathrobe, angry at being woken up early. "Mrs. Hargrove, where were you between 3 and 4 a.m. this morning?" Deputy Chen asked. "Asleep in bed, obviously. We have video footage of your vehicle driving past Connor Zimmerman's house at 3:22 a.m. Shortly after that, Mr. Zimmerman's tires were slashed." "That's impossible. My car was in my garage all night." "Can anyone corroborate that?" "My husband. He was asleep next to me." They interviewed Brenda's husband, Gerald, separately. He confirmed they'd both been asleep all night, but when deputies asked if he'd heard Brenda leave the house, he hesitated. "I'm a heavy sleeper," Gerald admitted. "I wear ear pads because Brenda snores. I wouldn't have heard her leave." It wasn't enough for an arrest, but it was enough for a search warrant. 2 days later, deputies searched Brenda's house and garage. In her garage, they found a utility knife with rubber residue on the blade, consistent with cutting tires. They also found a can of red spray paint matching the paint used on my garage door. Brenda was arrested on 2 counts of criminal mischief and 1 count of vandalism. She was taken to the county jail, booked, and released on $5,000 bail. The arrest made the local news. "Former HOA president arrested for vandalism" was the headline on the Rapid City Journal's website. The story detailed the entire saga, from the blizzard incident to the ongoing lawsuit to the vandalism charges. My phone exploded with messages of support from neighbors and clients. But I also got a few nasty messages from people who thought I'd pushed Brenda too far, that I should have just paid the HOA fines and avoided all this drama. One message in particular stuck with me. It was from someone using a fake Facebook account. "You destroyed that woman's life over a parking spot. I hope you're happy." I wasn't happy. I was exhausted, stressed, and worried about money. Even with the insurance company covering part of my legal defense, I was still out thousands in repairs, new tires, and deductibles. My business had suffered because I'd spent so much time dealing with lawyers and police reports instead of plowing. But I also knew I hadn't started this. Brenda had chosen to block my driveway during a blizzard. She'd chosen to demand $8,000 in fake fines. She'd chosen to sue me for $45,000. And apparently, she'd chosen to vandalize my property when things didn't go her way. The criminal case against Brenda moved faster than the civil case. Her lawyer negotiated a deal with the county attorney. Brenda would plead guilty to one count each of obstruction of emergency services, reckless endangerment, and criminal mischief. In exchange, the other charges would be dropped, and she'd receive a suspended sentence of 2 years supervised probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory anger management counseling, and restitution to me for the tire damage and garage door repairs. The plea hearing was scheduled for March 10th, 4 weeks after the blizzard that had started everything. I sat in the courtroom gallery, watching as Brenda stood before Judge Morrison, no relation to Patricia Morrison. Brenda looked diminished somehow, wearing a conservative gray suit instead of her usual flashy outfits. Her lawyer, a professional-looking man in his 50s, stood beside her. Judge Morrison reviewed the plea agreement. "Mrs. Hargrove, do you understand that by accepting this plea, you're admitting that you committed these crimes?" "Yes, Your Honor." Brenda's voice was barely audible. "And you understand the terms?" 2 years supervised probation, 200 hours community service, anger management counseling, and restitution to Mr. Zimmerman. "Yes, Your Honor." "Mrs. Hargrove, I want to be very clear about something. Your actions during the blizzard emergency endangered lives. Emergency responders were delayed because of your conduct. People could have died. Do you understand the seriousness of what you did?" "Yes, Your Honor." "I'm accepting this plea agreement because the county attorney believes it serves justice and because you have no prior criminal record. But if you violate the terms of your probation in any way, you will serve the full 2-year sentence in state prison. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Then I accept your guilty plea and sentence you according to the terms of the agreement. You're ordered to pay restitution to Connor Zimmerman in the amount of $2,847 for tire replacement and garage door repairs. You will report to probation services within 7 days to begin your supervised probation. Court is adjourned." Brenda walked out of the courtroom without looking at me. Her husband Gerald followed, looking defeated. Outside the courthouse, County Attorney Walsh found me in the hallway. "Connor, I wanted to let you know that Mrs. Hargrove's guilty plea should significantly impact your civil case. We'll be providing a copy of the plea agreement and judgment to your attorney. It's very difficult to maintain a lawsuit for property damage when you've pleaded guilty to criminal conduct that necessitated the property damage. So you think her lawsuit will get dismissed?" "I'm not making predictions, but yes, I think it's very likely." She was right. 2 weeks later, Rachel Donovan called me with the news. "Judge Hartley granted our motion to dismiss. Brenda's lawsuit is over." The judge ruled that the doctrine of necessity applies and that your actions were legally justified given the emergency circumstances. Even better, the judge ordered Brenda to pay your legal fees and costs. My firm's bill was $18,000, all of which Brenda now owes. I actually felt dizzy with relief. It's really over. It's really over. Brenda can appeal, but given that she pleaded guilty in criminal court, no appellate court is going to overturn this ruling. You're free and clear, Connor. That night, I sat on my couch with a beer and actually relaxed for the first time in 2 months. The lawsuit was dismissed. Brenda was on probation. My tires were replaced. My garage door was repainted. The crisis was over, but the HOA drama wasn't quite finished. At the next monthly meeting, Patricia Morrison announced that the board was proposing amendments to the HOA covenants to clarify the commercial vehicle restrictions and create better oversight of board authority. "We can't let this happen again," Patricia said. "The covenants need to be clear that emergency service vehicles are always permitted. We also need to limit the president's unilateral authority. No single board member should be able to levy fines or take enforcement action without a full board vote. The proposed amendments passed unanimously, with only 2 households abstaining. George and Martha Winston abstained, still apparently loyal to Brenda despite everything. Brenda and Gerald put their house up for sale in April. They moved to Rapid City, away from Pine Ridge Estates and the neighbors who'd witnessed her downfall. I heard through the grapevine that Gerald had insisted on the move. He'd been humiliated by the criminal case and wanted a fresh start. Their house sold quickly to a young couple with 2 kids who seemed nice enough. At the housewarming party they threw in May, the wife mentioned how grateful they were to be in such a friendly neighborhood. "Everyone's been so welcoming," she said. "Much better than our last HOA." I didn't mention what had happened. Let them discover the neighborhood's recent history on their own, or not. Hopefully, we could all move forward. Summer came, and I stayed busy with my landscaping side business, mowing lawns and trimming trees for many of the same clients I plowed for in winter. Life returned to something approaching normal. My business was actually doing better than ever. The publicity from the blizzard incident had brought me new clients who'd heard about how I'd fought to clear roads during the emergency. In August, I got a check in the mail from Brenda's probation officer. $18,000, the full amount of my legal fees. Apparently, Brenda had been making monthly payments as required by her restitution order. I deposited the check and used part of it to finally install a proper security camera system around my house. I also used some of the money to upgrade my plow truck, adding LED lights and a more efficient hydraulic system. If there was another blizzard, I'd be even better prepared. The first snow of the next season came in November, a light dusting that barely required plowing. But when the big storms hit in January, I was ready. My truck performed flawlessly. The roads were clear. Emergency services moved without obstruction, and my driveway stayed clear too. No yellow Hummers, no HOA presidents demanding impossible fines. Just me, my truck, and the work I loved. Patricia Morrison turned out to be an excellent HOA president. She ran meetings efficiently, communicated clearly with residents, and actually enforced the covenants in a reasonable, measured way. When the Johnsons painted their front door a slightly off-palette shade of blue, Patricia sent them a friendly note asking them to repaint within 60 days. No fines, no threats, just a polite request. The Johnsons complied without complaint. That's how HOAs are supposed to work. Reasonable people making reasonable requests to maintain a nice neighborhood, not petty tyrants wielding covenants like weapons. I heard through Mike Sullivan that Brenda had completed her anger management counseling and community service. She was apparently working at a nonprofit in Rapid City, keeping her head down and staying out of trouble. Her probation would end in March, and then she'd be done with the legal system entirely. I hoped she'd learned something from the experience. Probably not, but I could hope. As for me, I learned to never underestimate the power of a small amount of authority to corrupt. Brenda had been a normal person once, or so I'd been told by longtime residents. But 4 years as HOA president had twisted her into something ugly. The constant focus on rules and violations and fines had made her forget that neighborhoods are communities of actual people, not just properties to be managed. I also learned that standing up to bullies is worth it, even when it's hard, even when it costs money and time and stress. Because if I'd caved to Brenda's demands, if I'd paid the $8,000 in fake fines, she would have known she could extort anyone in the neighborhood. She would have become even worse. By pushing back, by refusing to accept her illegal conduct. I'd not only protected myself, but potentially protected every other resident in Pine Ridge Estates from future abuse. It was a hell of a way to learn that lesson, but I learned it. The second anniversary of the blizzard incident came and went without fanfare. 2 years since Brenda had blocked my driveway, since I'd pushed her Hummer aside, since everything had spiraled into lawsuits and vandalism and criminal charges. 2 years and life was good. My business was thriving. The HOA was functioning normally. My neighbors were friendly. I'd even started dating someone I'd met at a client's barbecue, a teacher named Lisa who thought the whole HOA saga was simultaneously hilarious and horrifying. "I can't believe she demanded $8,000 during a blizzard," Lisa said when I told her the story. "What was she thinking?" "She was thinking she had power and she could use it however she wanted." Well, she learned otherwise. Yes, she did, and so did I. I learned that sometimes the only plow in the county isn't just a truck with a blade. Sometimes it's a person willing to push through obstacles, no matter how stubborn, to do what needs to be done. I never saw Brenda again after the plea hearing. I heard she and Gerald eventually divorced, the stress of the legal problems and the humiliation proving too much for their marriage. I felt a little bad about that, but mostly I felt nothing. She'd made her choices. I'd made mine. We both had to live with the consequences. The HOA continued on, as HOAs do, managing the neighborhood and enforcing reasonable rules. Patricia served 2 terms as president before stepping down, replaced by a younger resident named David Fletcher who brought fresh energy and good ideas. The neighborhood thrived. And every winter, when the first big snow came, I climbed into my truck, fired up the diesel engine, and headed out to clear the roads. My driveway was always accessible. My truck was always ready, and the people of Custer County could count on me to be there when they needed me most. That was the job. That was the promise I'd made when I started this business, and unlike some people, I kept my promises. The story could have ended differently. If Brenda had just moved her car when I first called, none of the rest would have happened. If she'd accepted that emergency situations require flexibility, that rules sometimes have to bend in the face of necessity, everything would have been fine. But she didn't. She chose rigidity over reason, power over people, rules over reality, and she paid the price for that choice. As for me, I chose to keep plowing, keep working, keep serving my community. Some days were harder than others. Some storms were worse than others. But I showed up every time ready to do the work, because that's what it means to be reliable. That's what it means to be part of a community. You show up when people need you. You do the work that has to be done. And you don't let obstacles, human or otherwise, stop you from fulfilling your responsibilities, even if you have to push a few obstacles out of the way with a plow blade. The county renewed my contract every year. My client list grew steadily. My reputation as someone who would always show up, always get the job done, no matter what, became solid, and my garage door stayed clean, unmarked by vandalism. My tires stayed inflated, unslashed. My driveway stayed clear, unblocked. Life in Pine Ridge Estates returned to the peaceful normalcy it was supposed to have. Neighbors waved to each other. Kids played in the streets, and the HOA managed the community with quiet competence. It turned out that was all anyone had ever wanted. Just a normal neighborhood with normal rules enforced by normal people in normal ways. No drama, no emergencies, no lawsuits. Just home.